Welcome to the Misquamicut Beach Podcast, a podcast spotlighting the businesses, newsmakers, events, and memories of Rhode Island's historic Misquamicut Beach.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the Misquamicut Beach Podcast. I am Ben Barber. I'm one of the producers of the show. And today, for the very first episode, we're going to give you an overview. And I am sitting down and talking to Caswell Cooke, the executive director of the Misquamicut Business Association, and the other producer of this podcast.
Well, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to be. I'm excited to be doing podcasts finally. You know, we've done all the other mediums, and you said we need podcasts.
Yeah. Well, you did one of our shows a few years ago to talk about Springfest, and you're always on the radio around here, promoting the shows. And you actually used to host your own show on. Well, it was a public access show, but you had insane guests.
Yeah, we used to do a show called the Caswell Cooke Show. No stretch there. And we started in 1995 when I was 21. And over the years, I think we did the show. I think the last episode I did was probably 2012, and because, you know, kids and stuff and real life happens. But we've had everybody on the show, from the Beach Boys to the Who to Conan O'Brien, a lot of politicians, from Bob Dole to former Vice President Dan Quayle, Jeb Bush, Teddy Kennedy. We've had people like Peter Jennings from the news, who passed away. We've had one of my favorites, Dan Rather, from CBS Evening News formerly, and just a lot of cool guests. I used to use it as a way to get backstage to concerts.
Yeah.
And to meet people that I always thought were cool. And it kind of, that started before the Misquamicut Business Association, but when we started the MBA in 2000, that sort of theme of bringing some of these famous or formerly famous people to Misquamicut has been a reoccurring theme in the last 18 years that I've been doing the job, as far as bringing some talent to our beach. So it kind of like mixed into each other as the years went on. So
that obviously makes me think of the festivals, so Spring Fest and Fall Fest, which is the two yearly festivals. And we'll get into that in a little bit. So it's January right now when we're recording this first episode.
Nice and cold.
And you said when we walked into the house that you always feel better in the summer.
I do.
But just because it's not the summer doesn't mean that things aren't going on in Misquamicut. So coming up in a few weeks, we have the luau.
Yeah.
And can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I mean, the winter time is when we plan everything. So, you know, after we get done in October with our final event, which is our Guy Fawkes Bonfire Night in October, we take a few weeks and breathe, and then we have to immediately start planning for the summer. So we have like 40-something drive-in movies, and we have concerts on the beach, and we have festivals and fireworks and all kinds of stuff, and car shows and magic shows, and they don't just happen by themselves. And so we have to start in like November coming up with our magazines and maps and selling advertising, getting sponsorships. So the winter is when we actually work. And the summer we kind of have to just do. Like, we do the events and we ride it out and just like hold on and go. And, you know, selling things like, you know, selling space in our tourist center and all that stuff that we do in the wintertime. So, but our first big event for the season is always the first Friday night in February every year for over a dozen years. And we have this huge luau. And, you know, there's so many events that go on in our town that are fundraisers, and they're all worthy causes. And so we just wanted to have an event where we forget about the speeches and the rubber chicken dinner, and just have a party. And that's why I think for a dozen years it's worked. We have a band, we have a silent auction, we have a raffle, and we have food from everywhere. Whether it's you know, some new restaurants in town, some old favorites, they all donate a dish, and so you can go in, and for like $20 or $25 at the door. That's why people should get their tickets in advance. It's like all you can eat, all the music you want, and we always get at least 250 people at the Venice Ballroom, which Venice restaurant on Shore Road is actually in Misquamicut. It's in the Misquamicut Fire District, and it's one of the few places that's open year round. So we like to showcase the fact that, yes, it's wintertime, and yes, people aren't hanging out on the beach, but there's still businesses open in the beach area, and Venice and Winnapaug Inn are two of those. So, that's our first event of the year, and that's our major fundraiser is doing that, and then a couple months later we move into, that we start the season in May.
So spotlighting local businesses like Venice is kind of what this show is going to be all about. So you're not going to be on every episode. It's not going to be the two of us talking.
What?
Yeah, sorry. That was actually your call. But so we're going to get business owners and people who work at the businesses for a long time, or who have worked at the businesses for a long time. Excuse my English. And people that have memories of Misquamicut.
Yes.
And the people who clean up the beach for everybody.
Right.
So that's kind of the purpose of the show, is to share some of the fun stuff that happens, some of the real stuff that happens, and to spotlight all of the businesses, because the area is way more than just that state beach.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something that I've always tried to get out there. A lot of folks that hear the word Misquamicut, and we're famous. Our beach is famous, especially in Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York. Not so much in Rhode Island. I wish it was. Rhode Islanders don't come here for some reason. We want them to, but on average, I mean. But Hartford, Springfield, those areas, huge. New Haven. But a lot of people that come here come down Route 78, Winnapaug Road, and they almost have like the horse blinders on, and they're going right for that State Beach parking lot, and they think Misquamicut is the State Beach parking lot. That's, to them, the pavilion. That is what they call Misquamicut. And what we try to get out with the business association is that Misquamicut has hundreds of homes, 50 businesses, over 10 different places for the public to park. And so when people say Misquamicut Beach, do they mean the Pleasant View, the Andrea, Patty's, the Windjammer, the Dunes Park? Well, it's a whole strip. The amusements, the water slides. And I remember years ago, I knew we had work to do when we first started Facebook. And our Facebook presence now is over 100,000, which is amazing. And it's the largest Facebook presence of any destination in the state of Rhode Island. In fact, it's even larger than the state of Rhode Island's own Facebook page. But I remember someone posted years ago, I posted something about Water Whiz, which is the place where we have the water slides. And this guy very innocently said, well, I've been going to Misquamicut for 20 years. There's no water slides in Misquamicut. And I said, okay. And so my friend George Tattersall, who's going to be one of the guests, former president of the MBA, he said, let's go to the State Beach, Caswell. I said, okay. So we went to the State Beach one day. Busy day, full 2,700 cars parked. We go up on the pavilion. He goes, okay, you're a mom. You're here with your two kids. Look to the left. What do you see? Well, a half a mile down, I see some gray buildings. Okay, look to the right. What do you see? Well, a half a mile down, I see some gray buildings. He's like, you going to grab your kids and walk down there and don't even know what's down there? It just looks like some houses. And so all these people that come to the State Beach, they might be like, I don't really necessarily want to explore because I don't know what it is. I got my kids with me. I know I can park here. So our job as the MBA, nothing against the state. We work with them. We do our festivals there. But there's way more to Misquamicut than the State Beach. If you park at the Andrea, you basically get all your money back in coupons to buy food and drink inside. People don't know that. There's a lot of different places at the beach that you can go. I mean, think about parking at the Windjammer for the day. And then you not only have the beach, but you have all the rides and you have the restaurant. So there's so many different things. If you want to sort of get away from the big crowds, at the other end of the beach, down by the Breachway, is the Dunes Park, Family Beach. Little more expensive to park there, but you're going to have, it's just going to be a more relaxed atmosphere. So it's kind of like whatever you want. Do you want to go to Patty's and party? Do you want to go to the dunes and relax? Where do you want to go? And I'm sure I'm forgetting parking lots and people will get angry. But we did a video last year that we put on YouTube and Facebook, Twitter, Instagram about parking at the beach when the traffic sometimes backs way up, and it's because everybody's in line to get into that State Beach parking lot. And if they just went past it and parked at another lot, we could get the traffic dispersed quicker. So we made a video about parking at the beach, and it went nuts. It went 700,000 views. So we're doing it, through what you're creating here with this podcast. We're explaining Misquamicut a little bit better to the people that have been coming here for years, and I think that's part of the reason we're doing the show is to talk about the beach. But some of these guests that you mentioned, they're going to be great. Chris Walsh was a DJ. He and Mike Murray were DJs at a club that's gone now called the Atlantis, the Party Paradise by the Sea. And back in the 80s when the place was hopping, Chris was like the master mixer. And he went on to leave because of that and got a job at Kiss FM in Hartford, which is still going strong. And then MTV hired him in the 90s to put together compilation albums called MTV Party to Go Volume 1, 2, 3, kind of like those Now CDs they have now. And it sold so many copies that he got to become a voting member of the Grammys.
Wow.
His record sold millions.
That's awesome.
Of course, he didn't get paid millions, but he got to mix them. When Motown had their 25th anniversary, he did the Motown 25 remix. So this is and he started in Misquamicut.
Yeah.
And Roomful of Blues started in Misquamicut. So I hope we can get Al Copley or one of the Roomful guys. They'll tell you. They started in Misquamicut. Another one that's coming up that we hope to get on the show, John Cafferty, Beaver Brown Band. He always will say, started in Misquamicut. That's where we got our break in Misquamicut Beach. In fact, he's playing our Spring Fest. So these are cool, stories about people that sort of started or got their break playing at the beach. There's a band called Boston that was popular in the 70s and in the 80s. And they had songs like More Than a Feelin' and Don't Look Back. But there's a line in one of the songs where he's talking about, the band's talking about playing for a week in Rhode Island. Man came to the stage one night, and it's something about, you guys are out of sight. Well, they were talking about Jimmy Armanakis when they played at the Rec. I mean, so Boston, the band that sold millions of records, played at the Rec, and they wrote about it in a song about playing for a week in Rhode Island, and this guy from Westerly, who's gone now, but he came up to him and said, "Man, you guys are out of sight. You got to play some more." Whatever. But those are the kind of cool stories, over the years of some of these people that have come to our town or got their break in our town, and that story's got to get out there. I think this is a way to do it.
That's awesome. So let's. I see the great thing about producing this show for me is I don't know most of these stories. So as a listener to the show myself, I'm going to be fascinated by all of this, which is awesome, and makes producing any show really interesting when you're finding out yourself about all of this rich history. And that's crazy. That's awesome that Boston has a song. I know that Fish has a song that's insanely popular about the next
Weekapaug.
fire district over. Yeah,
Weekapaug Groove.
That's crazy. This area,
we'll skip the Slut in Misquamicut song by Vinnie Penn from Connecticut. Well, I used to play it at the Andrea, but people wouldn't like that anymore. I'm too old now to play a song like that. But there's all kinds of songs written about the beach, folks.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Can we say that word on a podcast? We can say whatever we want, right?
You're the.
I swear to God, there was a song called "Slut in Misquamicut." We don't go for that anymore. We're a family beach now.
That's good. So speaking of the family,
I threw him off there, folks, and I probably threw you off too.
So speaking of the family atmosphere, two huge events every year that we talked about a little bit earlier, Spring Fest and Fall Fest. They kind of cap off, they start and end the busy season. Is that, would you
I would totally agree. Yeah, 2 weeks before Memorial Day, 2 weeks after Labor Day. I mean, there's a couple things. I mean, people kind of assume that the beach just all of a sudden magically opens on Memorial Day. And then I think on Labor Day they think you roll up the carpet and chain the gate. People all winter long, is the beach open? I'm like, Yeah, I mean, there's nobody puts a gate up and says you can't come into Westerly. So, but people have that in their head. So our goal was to break that cycle by having events in the off season. So not only do we have Spring and Fall Fest, we have the Hartford Surftown Half Marathon. Hartford Marathon Foundation puts that on with us. We do the Guy Fawkes Bonfire Night, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. So we have other events that are pre and post season. But the way it came about was I had an idea to do a big music festival. I always wanted to, create a Woodstock or something. And I liked all these, I'm 43, but I like all these people my parents like. So I'm like a Beatles freak, and, I like all the stuff from the 60s and 70s. Many of the things I like are from before I was born. So I wanted to do a music festival. So I went out and raised like 70 grand. And we got this huge stage. And in July, in 2005, we did our first music festival. And it was Pete Best, who was the original drummer of the Beatles before he got kicked out in favor of Ringo. So that was kind of a cool, Beatle-y connection. And then our headliner was Davy Jones from the Monkees, who, huge TV show. And unfortunately, Davy passed. But I had met Davey through my TV show 5 years earlier, and he had come to Misquamicut, had lunch at the Andrea, was on BLQ, came to Seafood Haven, all this stuff. So I said, well, Davey would be great. So we had Davey, and we had 10,000 people show up, and it was a great festival in July. And then we'd had bands like Jefferson Starship, Chad and Jeremy, Jan and Dean, Eric Burden and the Animals. We had Justin Guarini, who was the runner-up to Kelly Clarkson from American Idol. We had just all these cool musicians over the years. And we did that for about 5 years, and it was huge. But my business owner said, Kaz, we already have 10,000 people here in July. Can you do something that brings them here when we need them?
Yeah.
So George Tattersall, our former president, who used to own Bayview Fun Park, and back in the day owned Mystic Fun Center in Carousel, which is gone now. And he also worked for years at the Windjammer when it was a skating rink and things like that. He and Charles Treffis, who owns the Windjammer, and I think Tom from Purple Ape, kind of said, they steered me in a different direction. They said, listen, let's bring in the amusements. Let's bring in vendors. Let's make this 3 days so you're not blowing it all in one night. And you do the music, Kaz. You do that part, but let's stretch this out. And that's what we did. And so we had people like Rick Derringer and some other classic rock people over the years play. Last year we had Christopher Cross, who was a huge Grammy winner. Sailing is his biggest hit. And we just kind of morphed it into a 3-day spring, 3-day fall festival with 80 vendors, 12 to 15,000 people coming through over the course of the 3 days. We do Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This year it's May 11th, 12th, 13th. And then September, it's 2 weeks after Labor Day. So, yeah, I mean, Spring and Fall Fest, this will be its 8th year, which is crazy to think. Because we started in 2010, and we do 2 a year. So when we get finished with this year, we'll have done 16 of these things. And they're like, they're like $100,000 operations. You're creating a little city. You're employing a ton of people. You got everybody involved. There's so much to do. There's so many things that have to be brought to the site. You got to work through the state of Rhode Island with the town of Westerly, Department of Environmental Management. And it ain't easy, but it's a heck of a lot of fun. And I think Spring and Fall Fest have become like local traditions for people.
It's crazy to... when you come down, what is the road that you talked about earlier?
Winnipaug.
The Winnipaug Road. When you come down Winnipaug Road, and you, especially at night, but anytime, and you see the lights and the Ferris wheel, on the beach in that skyline that so well of the beach to your left when you're coming down, but when you see the just this amusement park set up, and the big Ferris wheel, it's you automatically get excited because you're going down to the beach. You have the anticipation of going down to the beach, but then when you see that, it never doesn't bring a smile to my face.
Well, you know what it is? There's two things that it makes me think of. One is George Tattersall, who always says, we want to create memories. So that 7, 5, 10-year-old kid that comes to the festival, they're going to remember that their whole life. And I'm reminded of the Billy Joel song where he said, the good old days weren't always good and tomorrow ain't as bad as it seems. We are the memories. We're creating tomorrow's memories that in 30 years, if this stuff isn't around, they'll say, geez, Misquamicut used to be so cool. It used to have drive-in movies and car shows and these huge festivals. I mean, hopefully they'll never go away. But, 50 years from now, there could be some 60-year-old guy sitting there going, geez, when I was 10, Misquamicut Beach was the place to be. And I'm happy that we've created that because for many years, the beach wasn't that. The beach was known as like a place for drinking and drugs and, loud noises and bike rallies or something. And not that there's anything wrong with any of that, but that's kind of the locals looked at it negatively. And I think it's taken us close to 20 years to change that reputation around. And now what you're saying is the norm.
Yeah, and so the family beach atmosphere, also, it feels like tradition because of the things that you've implemented, the classic car shows, the festivals, in particular, the festivals and the drive-in movies. If you're a kid now, you can enjoy that and love it, and it's the coolest thing in the world. But if you're an adult who has a fondness for when they were a kid, the drive-in movies, the classic car shows, the bringing a kid to a festival in a cool place. Mm-hmm. It has a mix of cool now and nostalgia.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a very original person. I don't have a lot of original ideas of my own. What my job, I think, is to find stuff that worked in the past and to bring it back. I'm a big nostalgia person. So I would have never been the guy that invented the drive-in, but I'm certainly the guy that can bring it back because it's cool. And because, I think you're right. So I keep saying my age. So I'm 43. And when I was a kid, I lived out on Route 1 where the drive-in was, which is now the golf course out across from Shelter Harbor. And our house, actually, our backyard went up to the back of the screen. It was very cool living there as a kid. I was really little, but we went to some movies there, like in the early 80s. And then the place went out of business in, 85, 86, 87. And we didn't have a drive-in for all those years in Westerly. And fast forward to maybe 2010 or 11. I forgot what year we started the drive-in. Isn't that terrible? But my friend John Gonzalez, who we call Gonzo, he said, why don't we do a film festival in Misquamicut? We were just batting around ideas one day. And I said, yeah, And he goes, play some old films, Yeah. And then he was thinking like In the Windjammer, like kind of set up a big screen. And then somehow that morphed. And I said, well, what about, God, but you could do a drive-in. So back to George again, we had purchased these 2 sea-land cargo containers, the big containers you put on ships to do transatlantic crossing with stuff. So we Outback Storage sold us these 2 containers, and we needed the containers because we needed a place to put our golf cart for the road crew, the water lines, the signage, all the stuff from the festivals. We needed a storage, so containers are, So someone came up with the idea, let's stack them and weld them together, and then on the front we put a drive-in screen. And I went out and got a projector, and out of the back of my Jeep with 2 DVD players. It's ghetto style, but it works. And Chris Walsh, who we spoke of, he does it's actually almost cooler than the movies. He does the preview reel. We sit down and we'll find old commercials. The old I'd like to buy the world a Coke commercial with everybody on the mountaintop or something, something retro. And then we have an opportunity for people to advertise on the screen. So we have like local commercials, whether it's like the car wash or, Cleats or someplace local. And so we have this cool hour of previews, and then we show whatever. We show Caddyshack or Grease or The Goonies, or we play the retro movies. Jaws is the big one. Jaws just sells out every time. And for $15 a car, and you can put 8 people in a truck. I don't care. It's just $15
Yeah.
across the board. $15 a car, and instead of like $8 sodas, we have like $2 sodas. And instead of $16 candy bars, our candy bar is like $1.
Yeah.
And we have this retro thing where you tune your radio in and you watch the movie. It isn't as big as most drive-in screens, but it's still pretty big. And it's still pretty cool. And this year we've expanded, so we do Friday nights from May through October. And then in July and August we add Thursdays, and this year we're adding Saturdays. So we're doing, I think, 42 movies in 2018.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was looking at the list the other day.
Got a few new things in there. We threw in like Wonder Woman. We threw in Kong Skull Island. We got, Rogue One.
Yep.
So there's some stuff from the last couple of years. But we probably are more heavy on the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, there's a good mix.
There's a mix.
Like I said before, just about Misquamicut in general, there's a really good mix of current and nostalgia, which is awesome. So that about does it for the first episode. Thank you very much, Caswell.
Well, I hope people will find this interesting. Certainly the subsequent episodes will be more interesting than what I can come up with. But we hope to have some really good guests for you each week. Some famous guests, some locally famous guests, some people that are just part of the fabric of Misquamicut, the businesses that are the fabric that have been there for generations. And we hope to bring all these cool people to you and really spotlight what Misquamicut has to offer in terms of food, shopping, and hotels and things like that.
So if you liked this episode, please subscribe on iTunes, leave a comment, leave a review, a rating. That really helps us get the word out and find more people. You can like Misquamicut Beach on Facebook, which should be easy to find because there's over 100,000 people currently that like it. So we'll have updates on there that Caswell will be posting about the show when it comes out. It'll be a bi-weekly show. And if you don't like iTunes, you can get it on Google Play, in the Android store, obviously, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and just the website. And we'll have links for all of that stuff. Thank you guys very much. And next time you come to Misquamicut Beach, because if you're listening to this podcast, you probably come to Misquamicut Beach or you're planning to, go outside of that state beach. Go explore outside that state beach. That's kind of the motto of this show. That's the purpose of this show. There is so much to discover in Misquamicut, and I'm really excited about giving everybody an opportunity to see what's out there.
Cool. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. Have a good one, guys.
For more information on the events and businesses of Misquamicut Beach, make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and at Misquamicut.org.